Welcome to Down the Garden Path. I'm your host, Joanne Shaw, landscape designer and plant lover. I enjoy discussing down-to-earth tips and advice to help you seasonally manage your garden and landscape, and I also aim to bring you interesting and relevant topics to educate you all about the landscaping and horticultural industry. Thank you for joining me here today. With me is my guest, Ingrid Janssen. She's a Durham Master Gardener, and she has been a Master Gardener since 2012. And she's been a lifelong student of and advocate for the natural world, as well as a seed collector with a special passion for native trees. In addition to all that, she is also a director with Little Forests Durham, which we're going to talk about today. It is a nonprofit organization focused on planting Miyawaki mini forests in communities across Durham Region. And we both live in Durham Region, so I'm excited to talk about that. So can you start off, Ingrid? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
And can you tell me a little bit about Little Forests Durham?
So Little Forests Durham is a new nonprofit founded in 2024. And most of the members of my team, there are 7 of us now, started from the Master Gardener group. I was inspired by a similar organization in Kingston called Little Forests Kingston. So the name wasn't original. I totally stole it from them. But they've been doing really great work in the city of Kingston in planting Miyawaki mini forests in various locations. And I attended a workshop, and then I volunteered at a number of their plantings and thought this would be great to bring to Durham Region, and asked some of my Master Gardener group who wanted to join me, and a lot of people put up their hands, and so we started this group. So as I say, we're a small group. We've since recruited 1 member from outside the Master Gardeners, and we're looking at recruiting other members in the organization as we continue to try and spread the word both about Miyawaki mini forests and about the importance of increasing our tree coverage and building biodiversity in all of our communities, which is really what Miyawaki mini forests are all about. So we started in 2024. Our first project was in Uxbridge. We partnered with the Rotary Club of Uxbridge and planted the first mini forest that my group was associated with at Fields of Uxbridge. And last year we did 3. So first year we did 1, last year we did 3, and this year, hopefully everything works out, we've already got 4 in the planning stages right now for Durham Region in 2026.
Excellent. Okay, so there's so much to unpack there. So let's start with the planning. Like, how do you find the land, right? Or how do you choose a location?
So part of what we want to do is to make sure that all of these mini forests are on publicly accessible land. So we're working with the municipal governments. So a lot of what I do is I've presented at sustainability and advisory committees in the various communities in Durham. I've also worked with staff, municipal staff, who are interested in doing things or forwarding their forestry. I mean, they have forestry plans, they have tree equity objectives that they want to reach, and so I reach out to them and then we start working on it. One of the benefits of the first project that we did was that we partnered with the Rotary Club, and so what's happened, which is complete serendipity, but it's worked out so fabulously, is that other Rotary clubs within Durham Region have heard about that partnership, mostly through talking to the past president of that Rotary Club. Plus, they were asked to contribute to it. We had volunteers from Whitby come up to help with the planting in Uxbridge. And then when we were speaking to Cloca about potentially doing one in Whitby, because it was on Cloca land, the Rotary clubs in Whitby got involved in that. So it's really been a great partnership of the staff at the municipal level, service clubs, and of course the funding organizations, which have been key to this. So it's Green Communities Canada, the Greenbelt Foundation, and Trees for Life. So those have been our primary funding partners for the projects that we've been doing.
Okay. So yeah, so then it's not like you're not having to buy land, it's municipally owned land.
Right.
But do they, like, are you picking the location that you think works, or they're telling you which options are available?
It's kind of a, it's a discussion. So number
Teamwork.
one, it has to be a collaborative discussion. So often the Parks Department is involved in this because they are public spaces. And so, they're concerned because, of course, they have to maintain those parks. So there is some, back and forth, and we've had some sites, that we've discussed and we thought they were good locations, and then something came up and they said, no, that's not going to be a good site for it. So it's kind of that, it's very much a collaborative discussion.
Okay.
And of course, our focus, in order to build these little forests, it's not just publicly accessible, but we need to be able to bring material in. So it has to be, I got to back trucks in there. I got to be able to get trees delivered. So, it can't be kind of on a spot where I can't get material in, because that just makes the logistics that much more difficult, right?
Right. Okay. So and then my next question, I don't know, I have one question that I don't know which one to ask first, but because I think we need to talk about, I want to ask about what is a mini forest, but I think we need to talk about the Miyawaki mini forest and like what is that is it's a methodology, developed by Japanese botanist, Dr. Amira Miyawaki, and I think it's fascinating. So do you want to start by just talking about that whole methodology, and then we can kind of go from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dr. Miyawaki was a botanist in Japan, and his research was around trees and natural forests. And in the process of doing this, of course, Japan is one of those places where the native tree cover has basically been stripped from the landscape, except in certain areas, and those typically tend to be around Shinto temples. Because those are holy sites, they do not remove the trees. A number of events happened over the course of his tenure as a professor. I think it was at Yokohama University. But he started developing this thought about how do we replenish native forests, and a way that gets us to, if you know anything about forest succession, it starts with, kind of early plants like birches and aspens in North America, shrubs actually. So, and that whole successionary process can take 100, 200 years. He wanted to compress that. He wanted to go from an empty field to a full climax forest in 20 to 30 years. And so he developed this methodology. He started working on sites that had severely depleted soil. So one of the first things he developed was a method for regenerating of a type of soil that would be consistent with a forest. So I don't want to get too much into the science, but it's, bacteria heavy soils, which, you would have under grass, because grass clippings tend to contain a lot of nitrogen. Bacteria reproduces quickly and it feeds on that. Fungal growth tends to feed more on protein, and so they require a lot of organic matter. Soils that are depleted have very little fungal growth. Trees are symbiotic with fungi. We know that now from the work that Dr. Suzanne Simard did at UBC, which was just fabulous. If you ever want to read a great book, read Finding the Mother Tree. It's fantastic. But we now know that those fungal networks are really critical. And so he developed a methodology for digging out the soil, adding a whole bunch of organic matter to it, and then allowing that to sit, and then coming in and planting the trees and shrubs that would be native to that area in a very dense way. So we're talking 2 to 3 per square meter. Ooh. I think in some cases they go as high as 5, but here in North America I tend to stick to 3, and that's dense enough. And so you prepare the soil, then you buy or grow seedlings of all of the native trees and shrubs that you want, and you plant them at the same time, and they're all relatively the same age. So the stock that we use, for instance, typically 1 gallon pots, sometimes
Oh,
two.
okay. So they're baby.
They're 2 to 3 year old seedlings, basically. And so you're
Okay.
planting those very densely in soil that has been prepared for them, and then maintaining that for 2 to 3 years. So, taking out invasive species, any, weeds that are competing, that are getting too tall, for instance. And of course, protecting it from herbivores. And then after 3 years, that forest becomes self-sustaining, right? They're about the size of a tennis court. They're small. That's why, we call them mini forests or little forests. They're not big.
Okay.
And that's what the great part about that is. You can always find a corner in a park or, a conservation area where you could install one of these. We're not asking for a huge amount of land in order to do this.
Right. So so you're not looking at an already existing wooded area. Like, are you looking, like, if there's existing trees and stuff, is that okay? Or because I would think clearing a land is that's expensive and time consuming.
Yeah, no, we're trying not to get into the situation where we have to clear land in order to do it. I think we have a site coming up where somebody mentioned a lot of buckthorn, and I thought, oh dear, that's not going to be fun. So we're looking typically at, something which is a field, right?
Okay.
So for instance, the Whitby site that we did at Cloca, they are doing, so there is some early succession happening with willows and poplars and birches moving into an area which is an old field. But they have had a program of planting, so they're planting maples and oaks and other, climax trees in that area to eventually fill it in. But there was a spot next to a parking lot, which was basically just an old field, and it had lots of asters and goldenrod. There were a few shrubs in there, some autumn olive and some other, probably some buckthorns as well. But they mowed the whole thing down and then removed any of the stumps. So the way our methodology works is we don't have to do all of that soil engineering that they had to do, because our soil here in Durham Region is by and large pretty good. We haven't hit an industrial site yet where, we have to do a lot of remediation. So we just lay down cardboard. Everything has to be cut. In a grassy area, you just lay it right down on top of the grass, lay down the cardboard, make sure it's thoroughly wet, and then we put a thick layer of compost on top of that, 6 to 8 inches. And then another layer on top of that of mulch, typically wood chips. And that helps to kickstart the process of the fungus starting to grow and to rebuild the organic matter in the soil layer that we're going to be planting the trees and shrubs into.
Okay, so do you do that 1 year first and then come back and plant the next year, or?
We've done it in as little as 2 months. You typically want to leave it for 4 to 6 months. And we actually, in the Exbridge site, I think the following year, we had a soil biologist come in and test the soil. And she, it wasn't a huge increase in the amount of organic matter because she compared it to the untreated soil. But we were starting to see an increase in, it'll take years for that to really develop, but it will also take years for these trees and shrubs to grow to that level of maturity. So, they're developing together, which is perfect, right?
Okay. And that's the goal. So you don't want like some 2 gallons, some 1 gallons. You do want them.
We've had to use some 2 gallons. Hickories and oaks, most nurseries can't keep them in a 1 gallon pot for longer than a year because we know they're going to get big tap roots, and I don't want to have to be uncurling girdled roots before we plant them. So we've had to do some 2 gallons. I don't think we've gone as big as a 3 gallon. And the reason for that is, our manpower are volunteers, community volunteers. We put a call out and we get, depending on the day, we may get as many as 80 people come. Kids, older adults, families coming together. It's incredible. It really is. And so I want to keep the planting methodology for them fairly simple, right?
Okay.
Pull the, we have some pails available with either a compost tea or some kind of a rooting hormone that's been wetted with water for them to dip them in, because we don't necessarily, we're planting in the fall, so we're not necessarily watering the site right after we plant it, so we're asking them to dip it in, look at the roots, kind of, separate them out a bit, and then just, pop them in the ground. We want to keep it as simple as possible because these are community volunteers. They're not experienced tree planters, right?
Right. Is there, so as a landscape designer, I'm like, what's the plan though? Like, where does the maple go? Where does the oak tree go? Is there any of that? Or is it just kind of...
We lay it all out beforehand. So we
Okay.
found the best process. They weren't doing this in Kingston. They were literally asking their volunteers to kind of pick a site where they were going to put it. And I thought, oh, that's a bit chaotic.
Yeah.
So the way we worked it out, and it was great working with the president of the Rotary Club in Uxbridge. He's one of these, detailed guys. And so he had volunteers come, literally, and we've adopted this methodology because it worked great, with twine and stakes, and mapped the whole site out in 1 meter squares. And then when we moved all the material that got delivered, the team, my team, plus some assistants from Rotary, laid all of the plants out the night before. And then the volunteers came in, and all they had to do was to find a square and plant the 3 plants that were placed in that square. That allowed us to make sure that we were mixing. It's still random, but we're making sure that we're mixing, canopy trees with understories and shrubs, kind of, you're not planting all of one species in one corner, which could happen, or too many canopy trees in 1 square meter. So we wanted to make sure that we were kind of mixing it up, right? And I was checking for things like, the first site we did kind of ran down to it sloped down to a wetland, and I thought, okay, I don't want any of the trees that are going to be sensitive to too much water to be down the bottom. I want them at the top of the hill. Right. So we did things like that, but we lay it out. I don't want people to have to say, oh, where am I going to plant this? Because that would be, especially when you're getting 80 people, that would be total chaos.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, if you make it, when you're dealing with volunteers, we both are familiar with that. You need to make it as simple as possible, and then it's enjoyable, right? And if it's enjoyable, then they one will stay, maybe plant a second tree, or they'll come back to another event. So I think that's important, right?
At our first event, we had enough volunteers that we planted 600 trees and shrubs in roughly an hour and a half. I am not kidding. It was nuts.
It was nuts.
It was It is one of those things that, you plan these events and you show up on the morning and you're kind of going, ooh, let's hope we get enough people to do this.
I know.
And then everybody comes in, and then it's just it's unbelievable. It's this, you wonder at, you don't wonder. It's just an awe of the community and how they come together to do that. Now, my caveat's going to be when we put the call out for them to come and weed.
Yeah.
Are we going to get quite as much enthusiasm?
Yes, exactly. Well, what about the prep, like the 2 months ago or the 3 months ago prep? Because that's more like lugging bags of mulch and lugging bags of compost, right?
Yeah, well, that's why the accessibility of the site is one of the key considerations that we've learned. So we need to be able to get the trucks to back in and dump the compost. So Durham Region has been very generous. They have donated the compost for the sites that we've done so far, which has been amazing. So we're getting the compost from the region. And then in Uxbridge, we worked with a local tree service who said, sure, we'll give you as many truckloads of wood chips as you want. In Whitby, it was their forestry department that provided the wood chips. And so we've had these donations, but you need to get the truck and you want to dump it as close to the site as possible.
Yeah. And then that's a lot of So even though now it's not bags, so it's not plastic, which is good. You've eliminated the plastic. So how are those volunteers? Like,
Well, let me tell you, the Whitby group that came from Rotary because that project kind of had a very short timeline. We sort of didn't get everything sorted out until late, and then we couldn't get coordinated until a hot Saturday morning in August to do it. And let me tell you, it was hot. There was a lot of compost. There was a lot of wood chips. Not a huge number of people. I think we might have been up around 35.
Oh,
But
that's still.
they stayed the full 3 hours to get that compost and the wood chips laid down on that site. It was incredible. Yeah. And of
Wow.
course, one of the things we do is to make sure that, we provide a shade canopy. We had lots of water, popsicle things for people to cool down. And you want to keep your volunteers going. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's really incredible to see, my objective, of course, is to try and organize those earlier in the season so we don't have to do that on the hottest day of the year. But
Yeah, but you never know. I mean,
they
thanks
do
climate
it.
change, you don't know, right? It could be October and you have like an extremely hot day, right?
You
Like
could,
you
exactly.
don't know, spring, like we don't,
Yeah,
you never know
yeah,
when
yeah,
it's going to be. So, and what it's going to be
yeah.
like, or it could be freezing. I mean, that's one of the things too. It's not fun to do when it's cold and damp and
Right.
freezing either, you know?
Right. And climate change is one of the key reasons that we're doing this because we know that trees can provide shade and cooling islands, right? And that
Mhm.
was one of the things that Dr. Miyawaki advocated as well. He wanted to see these little forests right in the cities in Japan for exactly that reason, to provide those cooling islands. And there's a lot of stuff being done in cities in Europe. Paris, they're putting in mini forests exactly in London, and in the Netherlands they're doing it. And the kids, because they're planting these on daycare and school grounds, the kids are becoming the citizen scientists, and they're doing cool things like they will go in and measure the temperature outside the forest, and then they'll go into the middle of it and measure the temperature again, and then
Ah,
report that. It's yeah,
yes.
it's really amazing. This is a worldwide movement. It really is.
Yes, yeah. Yes, yeah, I've had the, privilege to tour some of Europe and it's kind of a cute story where my husband, we planned a trip for one of my big birthdays and to London and he planned all these gardens that we were to go
Mm-hmm.
visit.
Mm-hmm.
And then we
Right.
quickly learned that, it's just a park. It's just a great, right? Like there was no like there's no formal, I did get to see the formal
Yeah.
gardens and stuff, but all the ones he's like, oh no, they consider their, garden space differently than we do. Like, it's not a formal garden. It's just treed and shrubbed, and maybe there's a bench, maybe there isn't, or a
Mm-hmm.
statue to somebody or something
Right.
like that. But
Yeah.
it's just like a forested area, and but
Yeah.
they call it instead of calling it a park or whatever, they call
It's
it a
called.
garden.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so we kind of he's like he's so excited, and then I'm like, oh well, this is a
That's
nice
cool.
corner of the street with lots of trees and
Yeah.
shrubs. This is great if
Yeah.
you use,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So yeah, so Europe is definitely, the trees there um are unbelievable, and their climate,
Yeah.
they're able to last longer as well. Um, so back to the tree. So you're planting all these different varieties again, which kind of like makes my designer, right? Like I'm spacing out
Sure.
trees and I'm looking,
Right.
considering the maturity. So it's really kind of a bit about survival of the fittest, right? Because not all of
Well,
those trees are going to survive.
Um, and that's no different from the way a native forest works. I mean, right? A
Yeah.
seedling will start to grow, and it's pure luck whether it gets enough light or whether it gets cut down by a deer coming in and browsing. I mean, all of that happens, and
Okay.
so because that's one of the key, I guess, detractors of the Miyawaki method will say, well, that's very expensive because you're going to lose a lot of the plants. But what the Miyawaki method tries to do is to mimic native forest processes, right? So
Hmm.
lots of seeds will fall. Some of them will germinate, some of them will not. And so you will get, over time, everything will find its layers. So I talked about the fact that we're planting, what would occur in a climax forest. So let me talk a little bit about what a forest is. A forest is layers, right? It's a canopy layer, which are your tallest trees. You could have a subtree or just a tree layer below that. Then you get an understory layer, which could be medium, smaller trees, and then you get a shrub layer. So, eventually you will also get, plants that will grow underneath all that, because we know...
Yes, but you're not planting that, right?
But we're not planting those because the shade isn't there for those yet.
Okay.
But we're planting all 4 layers of the forest, which is why I said it was important that we do that layout, to make sure that we're kind of getting things that will... as this oak tree starts to grow, I don't want to plant, another oak next to it. I'll plant maybe a tree that will, like a dogwood, an alternate leaf dogwood next to it. And then maybe I'll plant a shrub with it. And so as the forest grows, because 2 things will happen. There will be cooperation, hopefully, in the rhizosphere, which is the soil level, once that fungal network starts to grow, because we know that's what happens. But there's also competition for light, because they're densely planted. So the tallest trees will grow fairly quickly, those that want the light. Those that are shade tolerant will grow less quickly, and then they will all find their level in the forest, right? So it becomes, my favorite word about all of this is all about community. A forest is a community coming together to plant a community, and then eventually creating a community for wildlife, habitat, biodiversity, birds, insects, small mammals. Eventually they will start to come back and they will start to live in that forest.
Okay. All right. And so you mentioned, outside of the planting day, like you dip the water, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And so are you also then organizing certain weeding days or maintenance days, or are people encouraged to kind of go on their own, or?
No.
Okay.
What we've done with, no. It's important for us, both the Rotary clubs that we're working with, and so it depends on kind of who's managing that project. In the case of Uxbridge, it was the Rotary Club that was driving it. So they will be organizing the weeding days. What happened this year was that as we were doing the site prep for the second one, which was going to be right adjacent to it, we also went back into the first one. And we noticed that there were a lot of Manitoba maples growing in that. So you need to be able to identify what it is you want removed. You don't want people pulling up accidentally stuff that you planted, right? Yes,
that's true, because you're planting baby things.
Right, you're planting baby things, and so it's important. And as master gardeners, we're kind of trained in plant identification, so we can go in and we can say, okay, here's what we're looking for. There's in one forest, we know that we have a lot of that wonderful creeping thistle coming in, and so we want to try and remove those. But again, you're digging roots up in a root zone that is fairly newly established, and you could be disturbing it. So there's, we want to exercise some care and caution. The forests that we've done, part of the protecting the forest has been, number one, using tree wraps for all the young trees.
Okay.
Because of bunnies. And we've put temporary fencing around them for the first couple of years. We've used snow fencing.
And like this year especially, right? Like this year, the snow cover.
I'm concerned about the one up at, I haven't been to Heber Down, the one at Heber Down, because one of my members was up there in January and the fence had actually blown down in a couple of spots. So I don't know how bad the rabbits are up there. We'll find out when we get back up in the spring. But it's also it's an area that's used extensively by people who walk their dogs. And so open parks, you want to protect against both four-legged and two-legged creatures, right? So we don't necessarily want kids running through it, uprooting trees or breaking them. So, part of it is providing that protection until it's established, and then we can let it grow on its own.
Hmm. Now, what about water? Another thing about we don't know when a drought is going to hit, whether or too much water, I guess, is a problem, but nothing we can really do about. But water,
Yeah.
that's why fall planting, right? Because this winter has been
Yes.
good. They're going to
Yes.
have a nice, but in the droughts.
Well, and that's the reason for the thick layer of both compost and the mulch on top of that. And one of the objectives is to, if necessary, to have additional mulch delivered and put on top of it to kind of, make sure that you're maintaining the moisture in the soil. So
Okay.
far, the forests that we've done, we haven't had to do any supplemental watering. But you're right, we're keeping an eye on that. So what we have done is developed relationships in both Uxbridge and Whitby with the fire department. So when we were doing the site prep in Whitby, we had the fire department come out with a pumper truck to wet down all the cardboard after we laid it down. The kids who were there had a ball because they got to take turns with the fire hose, which was just, over the
Yeah,
top of them. They loved it.
yeah.
So we've developed that relationship. So if we had an extended drought and we needed to water, but Cloca also has some, huge containers that they can mount onto the back of a vehicle that we could, and we'd have to do it by hand. We would have to pump it out and do bucket brigades. Fingers crossed we don't have to do that, but we do have plans if we need to. But
Right.
hopefully the way we do our soil preparation, fingers crossed so far, we haven't had to.
Okay. And so you just said a word there. I caught you saying cardboard. So is that part of the prep? Like more of like a
Yeah,
health strip? So you're starting off with cardboard?
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and that's just, it's like, we're just basically taking the lasagna method, right?
Oh yeah, like a health strip.
That's
Yeah. I mean,
simple.
that's my front. I started my front yard that way. So yes, it's
Exactly.
perfect way.
Yeah,
But
we were
but that's a
collecting,
lot of cardboard and
yeah.
packing tape. So from someone who didn't take off the packing tape in every box.
Oh, trust me. We had people removing staples, packing tape. In Whitby, we were really fortunate. One of the gentlemen works at a company that does huge cardboard discs for something. They were thin, but he brought us a whole stack of them, and we just, threw them all down and, doubled them up if we needed to and wet them down. And that's just basically because we know every site is going to have a seed bank. And, you don't want to be disturbing the seed bank extensively. So that's
Right.
just that extra layer of suppression to stop any of the, annual seeds that are going to be in there from coming up, and then covering it with compost and mulch, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So then we lay the cardboard out. So that's all in one day. So laying the cardboard
Yeah, yeah,
and then the mulch. Oh no,
yeah.
compost and then the mulch.
Yeah. And if you go to our website, you can see, because we have one of the members of our team who does our social media takes a lot of photos, and
Oh,
we've got each
great.
of the projects are laid out. We've got a page for each of the projects, lots of photos. Yeah, and we post those on social media as well.
Okay,
Just to
wonderful. So
keep,
yeah,
because
I'll
it's
have,
important. Yeah, to show the community, here's what you did.
yes, yes. Yeah, I'm so excited that we get to get the word out about this, and sounds like it's a great partnership to have the Rotary Club involved
Yeah,
as
because we've
well.
had discussions. One of the projects that we're hoping to do this year is going to be in the city of Oshawa. And so we've had a discussion with one of the Rotary groups in Oshawa already, hoping to get another one on board. I'm in early discussions. I live in Clarington, and so we're in early discussions with the town of Clarington at the moment. And I will be reaching out to the Rotary clubs here. There are other groups that have already stood up and said they would. There's a Clarington Climate Action Network, I think, or collective. I think it's a collective who reached out to me. They wanted to get involved in a project. So as the word is spreading, we're kind of having people come to us saying, we'd really like to get involved in a project, which, for me is fantastic.
Yeah,
Because,
yeah.
it shows that there are people who really want to do this. And it shows, I think, that we don't need to wait for politicians to do
Yeah.
things about climate change. We can do it ourselves. Everybody can plant a tree. right?
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
long as if someone gives you a spot, you can go and plant a tree. But, I'm also, we're trying to kind of build the thought that people can do this in their own yards and gardens. I did one for a lady in Whitby. We started it 2 years ago because she listened to one of my talks at the Brooklyn Whitby Garden Club and said, I would like one on my front yard. She had 2 big mature linden trees, but I designed a small forest that would grow underneath those trees. So again, shade-loving understory trees and shrubs. And Cloca got involved and helped find the material for her. And she now has a mini forest growing on her front yard. It's fabulous.
Oh, the size of a tennis court? No. Okay, so a mini one. A mini one. Okay.
We call those pocket forests.
Okay, pocket forest.
So,
yes, I would say that in my career, in my job, I try to plant as many of those as I can. Pocket forests, right?
Yeah, no, you can go as small as 6 square meters, 2 meters by 3 meters. I mean, you can go as small as you want. 1 tree, a couple of shrubs, and maybe a medium-sized understory type tree. You could put in a redbud, you could put in a dogwood. I mean, and if it's, if you don't really want a canopy-sized tree like an oak or a maple, you can go with a hackberry. There's lots of choice, right? But the focus, of course, is on native trees. And, And, they're native to southern Ontario. So Great Lakes St. Lawrence Forest, which is where we are located here in Durham Region. But, so this is another interesting little twist, that climate change says, it's going to get warmer. So we're also looking at a zone to the south of us, which of course is southwestern Ontario. And there you get what's called the deciduous or Carolinian forest. So you can also select some species from that group of trees because they may survive the hotter, drier summers better than some of the, like white pine. I don't think is going to do really well once, our summers get so hot and dry. I have a lot of white pine on my property, and every year at least one of them just spontaneously dies, and I think it's the heat and the drought that are doing it.
Yeah. Very interesting. So what is your goal for Little Forests Durham? Like, do you need more members, or do you feel like the 7 or 8 people you have on the are enough, and then you just need the support on the days?
So we have lots of objectives. We have our goal. We set a really aspirational goal for by 2030. We would like to plant 30 main forests in Durham Region.
Okay. Ooh, so 2030. Okay, that's not that long away.
30 and 2030.
So actually do 30 in that year, or have 30 by then? Okay, yeah.
30 by then.
Okay.
30 in 1 year. I don't think
I know. As soon as I said it, I'm like, oh my gosh, you couldn't do it.
And so that's one objective that we've set. So we would like to get enough community organizations or community members together to come and say to their municipal governments, hey, we want a mini forest in our local park, or we want one here, or whatever. So if there's some groundswell of demand from people in the community, I think that would help. So that's just building that awareness. We don't have any groups in Ajax and Pickering involved in this yet. So I would love to have people from Western Durham come talk to us, invite us to come and speak if that's what you'd like to do, and maybe start planning. I spoke to some people who work for the city of Pickering. They said, we have no land, and I almost laughed. I thought, what? We're not talking acres here. We're talking 200 square meters. We don't have land. And I thought that was kind of an interesting perspective. But, if people start asking, then, we start generating discussions, and discussions lead to, actions, hopefully. So that's another thing. We would love to have people join our team. There are 7 of us right now doing this work. And as I said, we've gone from doing 1 to 3 last year to 4 this year. So, that's a lot of planning and organizing. So if people would like to join our team, and if you have skills like, you can help with social media, you can help with project planning, any of those kinds of skills. Those are the behind the scenes skills, which is great. Or if you're really interested in learning more about, trees and planting, then you can volunteer. And we have a link on our website where people can just send an email in and say, hey, I want to volunteer at one of your projects. We have a list that we maintain. When we have a project, we send, mass emails out to our volunteers saying, hey, on this and this date, we're doing this project in this community. And so if you want to sign up for that, just send us a quick email and we'll add your name to the list. So lots of ways that people can get involved if they want to.
Money. So
yes.
Yeah. So, it sounds like it's pretty budget friendly compared to some organizations but those baby trees still cost money, and the mulch is being donated so far, and the compost donated. So that is great. So I guess it goes in both parts. I was going to ask, where do all the little trees and shrubs come from? And also, how do we pay for those?
Okay, so we've been very fortunate that we have great funding from, Canada-wide organizations. Green Communities Canada was kind of they run a mini forest community of practice, which I had joined in 2023. And they sent a call out and said, hey, we've got some grant money being made available by the Greenbelt Foundation. So that was where our first project in Uxbridge was partly funded through the Greenbelt Foundation, partly funded through the local conservation authority. Then in Uxbridge happens to be Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. We have 5 conservation authorities in Durham Region, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, right now we do anyway. Somebody's trying to change that, but anyway.
They're trying to change it, but right now we have 5. So they had some restoration, so they're doing some ecological restoration, so they had some funds available. So we had $10,000 from the Greenbelt Foundation and $5,000 from Lake Simcoe. So we had a budget of $15,000 for that project.
Okay.
And
is that a good budget? Like, was that good?
That's a typical budget. So 15 to 20, depending on whether or not you have to pay for. I think the latest budget I did was around $18,000, and that includes the cost of the compost and the mulch. If we can get it donated, then we
that's smart.
The cost of the budget down, right? But, one of the things you also want to do is account for your volunteer hours, because that's an in-kind service. That's the community providing the manpower to do it. Because if you were a landscaper, you would be paying people to plant those trees, right?
Yes.
So that's part of the budget calculation. But, Green Communities Canada has been a great supporter of this. They provide lots of educational materials on Miyawaki mini forest as well, and it's all free. And last year we worked with Trees for Life, which is, of course, I think it's a nationwide charitable foundation now. I don't know if it's just Ontario. I think it's nationwide, which is Mark Cullen originally started the Highway for Heroes, and it's kind of morphed into this organization called Trees for Life. They have a lot of very generous donors. Plus, I think they're also tapping into the federal funding for the 2 billion tree program.
Okay.
So they help to provide the funding, and of course, I hit the municipal governments up because I said to the town of Whitby, great, I expect you to throw $5,000 in. They did. So we kind of work it, and of course the Rotary clubs are great too. They're not just providing volunteers; sometimes they're providing money into the project. So,
excellent. Okay.
Yeah, which, not huge amounts, but still, it all adds up, right? All of these little bits and pieces help us to put together a fairly robust project plan. The trees all come from native plant nurseries.
Okay.
The really big benefit to this is because of the focus on native plants that we've had over the last, I would say, 10, 15 years. We do have a lot of really great native plant nurseries, especially those that are focused on doing woody plants. So I've used verbinans in Ancaster, Hortico is another one. We have one local here in Pontypool, which is Pine Needle Farms, that does a lot of native plants and trees. There's a small family-run operation just north of Trenton called Natural Themes Nursery. There's native plants in Claremont, so there's lots of different places where you can go,
for trees,
doing a project for trees.
Yeah. So I will say this about that is that I don't think anymore you need to necessarily only go to those specialized native plant nurseries. There are other growers in Durham Region,
absolutely.
right, that do grow native trees, Cobes, Dutch Master, that type of thing.
Yeah,
they may not have them as small, but it depends. Like, it's still worth a conversation, right?
Uxbridge, I've spoken to Uxbridge Nurseries. I had a brief conversation with Cobus Nursery because they're close to me this week. I mean, there's lots of places where you can get them. It's getting the size you want.
Right. Yes.
That's
that is
piece.
That is the case.
They tend to focus a lot on caliper-sized trees, which means you're getting up to really large containers and, ball and burlap stuff. I mean, you can't even lift that. You need cranes.
Yes. Yeah. No, that is true. Now that I say that, that's true. But they had to start somewhere, right? But so it's a matter of, that type of thing. So we are fortunate in Durham Region, right? We have a lot of tree growers and native tree growers and nurseries, and that's something I don't think people are aware of. So that is great that you're getting that support.
Yeah, and I'm always looking at who are the people that we can partner with. I haven't yet spoken to anybody from Leaf because I know they do a lot of tree planting in Durham Region as well. They focus mostly on the backyard tree planting and some restoration projects, but they do conventional tree planting, right?
Right.
Which is you're planting the trees typically 2 meters apart, and they may or may not be using larger stock. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm going to reach out to them and have a discussion with them as well.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Now, do you, obviously it's a moving thing, right? Like it's a live project in the sense you're dealing with live material, and you need bodies, you need money, and you need cooperation. So I just think it's fascinating, and I'm so excited that I get to get the word out. And I will get the word out and do my part in Pickering. So I'm part of the Pickering Garden Club. Do you ever do like the little farmers markets at all and have like a table set up with information? Is that another productive way?
We haven't been doing those kinds of events
yet.
We're kind of limited in manpower, so don't know if that's something that'll be on a future list. We are involved with the Brooklyn Whitby Garden Club does a plant sale every May. It's on May 23rd this year.
As do we,
we started selling native plants. So, I mean, some of it is just because we all grow native plants in our gardens. We dig up our plants, we divide them up, we sell those. And we've had some woody stock as well, so some shrubs and trees. That was kind of fundraising for our organization because literally we started with no money. And, if you want to set up, you know this yourself, you want to set up a website, you want to, do things, you need, and file incorporation papers with the province, you kind of need money to do that. So we had to do a little bit of this bottom-up fundraising initially, and we have a GoFundMe as well. So we put a link on our page if people want to donate to us. We are not a charitable foundation. We can't, issue tax receipts, but if people want to help us out, we would be more than happy to have them donate, and that money will go straight back, into the projects that we do in the community.
Excellent. So it's a not profit, but not a charity.
No, because becoming a charity is a whole different level of paperwork with CRA.
Yes.
And you have to have a certain amount of, I think there's a certain limit of revenue that you have to hit. We're nowhere near that big. I mean,
Right. That's good.
We're peanut sized. right?
And so your website, so I'll have all your information on the show notes,
Yeah.
but if people want more information, they should check out
Little Forests with an S, Durham.ca.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
that's our website. And we have both Instagram and Facebook pages. You just do Little Forests Durham and you will find us.
Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. Is there anything I missed? Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything. We've covered
Excellent.
the Miyawaki method. We've covered
We did.
Where we're doing projects.
Yes.
Who's getting involved.
Okay.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. So my last question, especially as I know it's going to be a native tree, but what is your favorite tree?
Oh, that's like asking for my favorite child.
Yes, I know.
People used to, because I grow peonies as well, people used to ask me that question. It depends what's in bloom, but do I have a really favorite tree? In my garden, I have a tree that I collected the seed, grew from seed, that blooms in the spring, and it's a flowering dogwood.
Ooh, yes,
Cornish,
I have one of my.
Florida.
Oh, yes, and they are so beautiful.
Yes.
I know. Yes. Oh,
So
excellent.
I think for now, that's what I would say. Ask me in the fall, and I'd probably say a sugar maple, right?
Yes, yes. Oh, that's good. I would love to do another talk with you about the seed collecting. So if you're ever open to that, I've never talked to anybody about that.
Okay. I've been doing this I'm terrible. I always have little seed envelopes and pens in my purses and my backpacks or wherever I go, I'm collecting seeds. But yeah, we could certainly have a chat about collecting seeds. Lots of people are doing, I have lots of friends that are getting into winter sowing. That's becoming a big thing as well. I don't know if you've had about that. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And you know what? It's so funny that you say that because we now have large distilled water bottles around the house or my recycling bin, and even we're at my friend's cottage and I'm like, can I have those? Because I've always been hesitant, like, oh, I got to go find the bottles. Like, I can't do that. So now my husband's like, and I'm like, oh wait, don't get too many. Like I'm new to this. Like, so winter sowing. So I'd like to try it. You need something like you need the container, right? That's the first part. But before I know, because he's like, oh, I think I can hang them. Like he's planning for me to have like 50 bottles, and I'm like, no, don't get over the top with that.
People are getting a little. You don't have to have water bottles. You can do them in pots and in trays as long as you're protecting them from rodents, rabbits, whatever.
Yes.
Because I don't have chipmunks in the winter, but I definitely have squirrels running around all over the place. Mm-hmm. So, I have, my husband built a big box that's got like heavy gauge wire on both sides, and the top that comes off does as well. So I can put anything that I want to grow winter sow in there, and it's completely protected.
Oh, that's good. Yes,
you can just do pots. You don't have to,
It's true,
but anyway,
I guess.
Yeah,
yes.
I know. Everybody's getting into the.
I know.
Cutting them and putting the shape it becomes a mini greenhouse, and you don't have to go that fancy because basically you're just, and here we are, we're completely off topic.
I know. That's a whole other show now, Ingrid.
I know. You're mimicking nature, right?
Right.
Because when the seeds fall in the fall, they get covered with snow. They go through freeze-thaw cycles, and that helps to, trigger germination. That's all you're doing. Right.
Yeah, I just want to grow spinach because I'm tired of paying for U.S. spinach. So,
I stopped buying it last spring because I have the luxury of a greenhouse.
Yes.
And I just had some plastic container. I now have raised beds in my greenhouse, and I will go out soon once we get past the -18 night and start sowing some early lettuces and spinach and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I love it too. And finding Canadian companies that do, they're there now, but you got to find it, right?
Yes, yeah. And we have to ask our grocery managers to buy it, right? I went through that with garlic, like, oh my gosh, So yeah. But this is a whole like 3 other shows at the end of that show.
Exactly. I
So
grow garlic too, so
yes,
that's a
yes.
whole other discussion.
So thank you everybody for
Okay.
listening. I hope you are as excited about this organization, Little Forests Durham. Of course, I'm passionate because I'm from Durham Region. I'm hoping some of our other listeners are also. But if you're not and you're just elsewhere in Ontario, right, there you can look into, how they were able to grow it. They learned from Kingston. This could be something that I love having something that's like ground. Starts from the ground up, and that we need to take control over municipalities and the importance of trees, especially in regions that are undergoing quite a bit of development as well, right?
Right.
Yeah. So thank you very much for joining me here today, and I look forward to seeing you soon and another show on on collecting seeds for
Absolutely.
trees.
Thank
That
you.
would be wonderful. So thank you, everybody. Again, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will talk to you next week. Bye for now.